On this Saturday night, the health risks facing the U.S. president. Donald Trump's COVID-19 checkup.
The president received a special antibody therapy directed against the coronavirus.
His wife, his inner circle, and his campaign team infected. Could this have an impact on the American election? Loosening cross-border travel restrictions.
I shed tears every day there, but as of yesterday, I think I've turned the corner.
The elation for families looking to reunite with loved ones. Plus, justice for Joyce. The outrage over the treatment of an Indigenous woman as she lay dying. And the protector of the environment who made a mark on Parliament.
The first elected Green Member of Parliament in Canadian history.
Where do the Greens go from here?
Global National with Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with the U.S. president's health. Donald Trump is said to be working from his hospital bed at Walter Reed Military Medical Center. The president tested positive for COVID-19. So did his wife. So did key figures in his inner circle and on his campaign team. It's still not clear where and when Trump contracted the virus, but as Jennifer Johnson reports, the focus tonight is on the risks he faces with a disease he played down at the beginning of the pandemic.
Doctors say U.S. President Donald Trump is doing well at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center while battling COVID-19. His doctor says the president is undergoing a 5-day course of the experimental treatment remdesivir.
At this time, the team and I are extremely happy with the progress the president has made. Thursday, he had a mild cough and some nasal congestion and fatigue, all of which are now resolving and improving.
Dr. Connolly painted an optimistic picture contradicting White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who told reporters the president's vitals over the last 24 hours were concerning and the next 48 hours will be critical. Multiple reports say the president needed supplemental oxygen while still at the White House. The president tweeted, "I'm feeling well," but doctors say his age, 74, and being slightly overweight make him more at risk.
We have monitored his cardiac function, his kidney function, his liver function. All of those are normal.
The president and first lady are among several people who have contracted the virus after attending the ceremony announcing Judge Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the U.S. Supreme Court. Others include former counselor to the president Kellyanne Conway and Republican Senators Mike Lee and Tom Tillis.
I think the network of people who are possibly infected and carrying this virus are just, it's almost unlimited.
Trump campaign manager Bill Stepien and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie have also tested positive. They were part of a small team that prepped President Trump for his first debate against Democratic candidate Joe Biden.
I put a mask on, when I think I need it.
In the audience, members of the president's family refused to wear masks, violating an Ohio mandate, but sticking to a common theme for the Trumps and members of his administration throughout the pandemic. Democratic candidate Joe Biden has tested negative so far. COVID-19 now becoming even more of a centerpiece of his campaign.
We need to take the science of fighting this disease seriously if we're going to save lives.
Doctors won't say how long the president will stay in the hospital. Vice President Mike Pence remains virus-free and continues to campaign while the president cannot, adding more chaos to a presidential election just over a month away. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Our Washington Bureau Chief Jackson Proskow is here now to talk about the implications of the campaign with Donald Trump in hospital and exactly 1 month until the election, Jackson.
Robin, there are a few critical things to remember as both campaigns try and press ahead at full speed. One is that voting is already well underway. Millions of Americans have already cast ballots in person or by mail. And number two is the pandemic is the one issue President Trump is desperate to avoid talking about. Now he can't. It is the issue in this campaign. Now, the Trump campaign says the president has obviously suspended all in-person campaigning, but the vice president and 3 of his children are set to hit the campaign trail for in-person events this week. Meanwhile, former Vice President Joe Biden is pressing ahead as close to normal as possible. We should point out he has pulled all of his negative campaign ads from the airwaves out of respect for the president. Really, though, these are critical final days of the campaign. And, Robin, they're especially critical for President Trump, who is well behind of Biden in the polls right now.
But what happens if one or both of the candidates becomes too ill to finish the campaign?
Well, this is where the Electoral College, which is often maligned, might actually come into play. And here's a hypothetical for you. If one or more of the candidates somehow becomes incapacitated between now and Election Day, the Electoral College could actually step in and appoint a candidate to be chosen by the electors.
The electors would be instructed by their party national committees to vote for X instead of President Trump, or if something happened to former Vice President Biden, vote for Y instead of Biden. So the electors don't even meet until early December. And then they forward their votes to Congress, and Congress counts them and makes it official in early January. The inauguration is January 20th. So our system draws this out and actually makes it easier to adjust if something terrible happens.
Okay, Jackson, what about the remaining presidential debates? Will they continue?
Yeah, this is the big question in all of this, and it really depends on how President Trump's recovery goes. We know that the Commission on Presidential Debates is also looking at changes for any of the upcoming events, and a big one would be requiring all audience members to keep their face masks on at all times. And this comes after several of Trump's family members refused to wear masks during the last debate. The first vice presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence is scheduled for this week. We already know that the two candidates have been moved further apart on stage, but really, Robin, it's a big open-ended question as to if or how any of these events can go forward right now.
Our Washington Bureau Chief Jackson Proskow, thanks for that analysis. Turning now to the situation in this country. Quebec is once again seeing a major spike in cases. In the last 24 hours, 1,107 people in the province tested positive for the virus. That's the highest one-day total in any province or territory since the pandemic began. In Ontario, more than 650 new cases were added today. There have been more than 164,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 across Canada since the beginning of this health crisis. The pandemic has separated thousands of Canadians from loved ones living in different countries. But tonight, they finally have something to celebrate. The Canadian government is allowing more exemptions for the border closures. And as Abigail Bimman explains, it includes extended families, couples, and international students.
I woke up this morning actually feeling excited for the first time in probably, 6 to 8 months.
Seeing each other on screen has been the reality for Sarah Campbell and Jacob Taylor since February. Taylor is in the UK and wasn't allowed to visit Canada. But come October 8th, the government is changing the rules, allowing them to reunite.
Will include people in an exclusive, long-term relationship and their dependent children, as well as non-dependent children, grandchildren, siblings, and grandparents.
Being separated from your partner in a pandemic is tough enough.
The cancer issue has been really hard, sort of being sat here, because I'm almost sat here on the sideline.
Sarah had to undergo surgery for thyroid cancer alone, and radiation is coming up in November.
All you need and all you want is literally just to hold your partner's hand and just to be there. The physical presence, it means so much. And having gone through that surgery without him, I just know it's going to be so much better with him.
Like anyone else coming to Canada, Jacob must quarantine for 14 days. The couple plans to get married his first day free. But the government also announced some quarantine exemptions on compassionate grounds.
These situations could include being with someone you love to say goodbye at the end of their lives, or attending a funeral or end-of-life ceremony.
This victory, is a proper legacy for my wife and the struggles that we had.
A legacy for Donna McCall because the news comes too late. The woman who spent decades caring for others as a nurse died in August without her children by her side. They live in the U.S. McCall fought to change the rules for others ever since. The group Faces for Advocacy believes this could help thousands.
We hope that the people of Canada, when they hear this news, understand that we don't want to get our mothers sick. We don't want to bring COVID to our families. We're going to do this safely.
Newly widowed, McCall says he's alone in town and hopes his brothers in Chicago will now be able to visit too.
I grieve every day, that's for sure. I shed tears every day. there. But as of yesterday, I think I've turned the corner because these are tears of happiness now.
Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
Bill C-4 has received royal assent. It's a new benefit for workers and others who don't qualify for EI. Our Mercedes Stevenson caught up with Canada's Employment Minister, Carla Qualtrough, to find out how the package will help Canadians stay afloat. Mercedes?
Robin, much of the focus in Ottawa this week was on the government's latest COVID-19 relief package, Bill C-4. It cleared both the House and the Senate, and it replaces the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB. The bill expands the employment insurance system and creates new benefits for workers who can't go to work because of COVID-19. At one point, 7.5 million Canadians were receiving the CERB. And Canada's employment minister told me there's a chance we could see similar numbers of Canadians out of work with this second wave. Here's what she had to say.
We know that it's possible for a full economic shutdown that we could get there. We're not expecting to get there. As I said, we think that we can more tactically approach the economic impact of this go round, but we need to be ready, and we needed our benefit system to be ready to pivot at any time to the reality of a lot of people being back off of work.
The Conservatives say they won't support the government's speech from the throne, but they also didn't want to get in the way of support they say Canadians needed that were included in that benefits bill that has now passed. That said, while they might agree with what's in the bill, they didn't like the way the government handled it, fast-tracking it through Parliament without much debate.
It really is troubling to see how Trudeau continually holds back Parliament, shuts down Parliament, and then is forced to, because of his own actions, to ram through legislation that is spending billions of dollars with virtually no oversight. And it really goes to what has been a habit of Trudeau, and that is disrespecting democracy and Parliament. And I think we're seeing him using this pandemic to his own political advantage.
Also on the show, we'll get the latest from Washington, D.C., where U.S. President Donald Trump and the First Lady remain in isolation after testing positive for COVID-19. The American election is now just about a month away. We'll have all that and more on the West Block. Robin?
All right, thanks for that, Mercedes. Thousands of people gathered in Montreal today to demand justice for Joyce Echaquan. Supporters held a peaceful march in the city. The Quebec government has promised an inquiry into the Indigenous woman's care at a hospital. Echaquan recorded herself while she was visibly distressed and calling for help. Staff at the hospital were caught on tape taunting her with insulting remarks shortly before she died. A nurse and an orderly have since been fired. Police in Nova Scotia are investigating a hate crime after a sign directing visitors to the headstone of Viola Desmond, a Canadian civil rights pioneer, was vandalized. The sign in Camp Hill Cemetery was marked with 3 highly offensive racial slurs, but they have since been removed. In 1946, Desmond was arrested for refusing to leave a whites-only section of a movie theater. It's one of the most high-profile cases of racial discrimination in Canadian history. Coming up, nearly 24 people are missing in France and Italy as Storm Alex pounds Europe. Venice felt the brunt of what's known as Storm Alex. The low-lying city is particularly vulnerable to this kind of weather. Newly installed flood barriers were put to the test and have appeared to held back high tides. Earlier, France was hit with the system's fierce winds and torrential rain. Nearly 500 millimeters of rain fell in just 12 hours near Nice. France usually gets about 600 millimeters of rain all year. The mayor of Nice says this is the worst flooding in a century. Millions of people living in and around the Spanish capital are under another strict lockdown as cases surge. Madrid has become Europe's biggest hotspot. And to deal with the spike in cases, Spain's government has imposed 2 weeks of new restrictions. Among the new rules, restaurants must stop serving food and drinks after 10 p.m. And no one is allowed to travel in and out of the city unless it's absolutely necessary. Tighter restrictions have also been imposed in the UK, where cases are rising fast. In Northern England, it's now illegal to meet people indoors from other households. The new rules went into action as hundreds of university students in the city of Newcastle tested positive for COVID-19. Still ahead, an Ontario father's determination to get help for his son, who has a rare disease. Months ahead of their son's third birthday, an Ontario couple is determined to get him a life-saving gift. The young boy has a rare disease. With no cure, it could leave him paralyzed by the age of 10. Treatment costs millions, and the pandemic halted the family's fundraising plan. But as Karen Lieberman explains, nothing can stop their perseverance.
Is your brother?
These can be isolating times for anyone, let alone the family of a child with an ultra-rare disease. Michael Piravalakis is the only child in Canada with spastic paraplegia type 50, SPG 50 for short.
COVID has been the hardest point of my entire life, right? I'm working, my wife is not working anymore. We're worried about our bills. We're worried about how we're going to pay for the future.
Let's go, keep going.
We first met him at 18 months, shortly after he was diagnosed with a neurodegenerative disease that will rob him of all functions one by one.
I stopped praying for a while and I was like, why would they do this to him? Why would he have this disease?
There was no hope. No hope.
In a race against time, the Toronto family decided to crowdfund a cure. Researchers believe gene therapy has the potential to halt the progression of SPG 50 and even reverse some of the damage. But there are no guarantees for the 60 or so people believed to have the disease worldwide. Even so, Michael's family and others believe this is their only shot, as nobody has ever been treated this way for the disease before.
The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted everyone in some way, shape, or form, and Michael is no exception. His therapies were halted, and the fundraising to help save him put on hold.
So far, more than $1.5 million of a $3 million goal has been raised. That's just to get the initial clinical trial ready for Michael and up to 10 others in about a year. The family anticipates they will need more financial help down the line, but they're only fundraising now for their immediate needs.
I think if COVID didn't happen, we would have raised $2 million this year for the funding.
For months, from home, they watched Michael's disease progress.
You see that he's more in his tippy toes rather than on his feet because the spasticity is kicking in, the paralysis is kicking in. And that's related to being in quarantine for 6 months with no therapy.
So Terry decided, despite the pandemic, his son must be saved.
So I started training and I thought maybe I could get from here to Ottawa, and we decided that we're going to see if we can meet Mr. Trudeau.
A 400-kilometer bike ride from Pickering, Ontario to the nation's capital, with the goal of meeting the Prime Minister and urging him to contribute to the fundraising efforts.
It's a scary thought to say that you're so close and just because of money you can't get your kid treated.
The journey is a costly one, both emotionally and financially, but at the heart of it, Michael, a child whose future hangs in the balance. Karen Lieberman, Global News, Toronto.
The Green Party pioneer. Up next, Elizabeth May's impact on Canada's political landscape. The Green Party of Canada will have a new leader. Thousands of members are voting today for one of 8 candidates vying for the top job. The winner will succeed the woman who has been the face of the party for more than a decade. Eric Sorensen has a look back at the long career of Elizabeth May.
And I organized an environment club in my high school.
Long before she discovered politics, Elizabeth May found the cause that would shape her life, protecting the environment. In the 70s, she organized against pesticide spraying in her home of Cape Breton. In the 80s, the environmental lawyer worked on Canada's earliest climate policies on acid rain and ozone depletion in the government of Brian Mulroney.
There was no doubt in my mind, nor theirs, that we had to act on the climate crisis.
She became a national public figure, founded the Sierra Club, and championed environmental awareness. To protest the infamous tar ponds in Cape Breton, she once undertook a hunger strike on Parliament Hill.
It was a personal decision that, as an act of desperation.
Soon she would take the fight for the environment inside the halls of Parliament. First by winning the leadership of the small, often ignored Green Party.
Elizabeth was never in politics for politics. She always wanted to make the world a better place, particularly by solving our serious environmental problems. And I think she realized when the Green Party leadership came open that that was a vehicle to help her do the right thing.
Failing to win a seat in her first attempt, May finally found fertile soil for a Green politician on Vancouver Island. And that was an historic turning point in Canadian politics.
I stand here today as the first elected Green Member of Parliament in Canadian history.
May brought her fight to Parliament and fought her way into the national debates.
You just sweep it across the table, don't you?
An important victory for women and for the issue she put at the centre of Canada's political discourse.
Climate crisis is the single biggest economic opportunity in a generation or more.
That's not responsible.
She has faced controversies, the views of some Green members, and at times her own comments.
To be humiliated like the rest of us schmucks.
But May spearheaded legislation on Lyme disease and a ban on whales in captivity, and has worked across party lines to find common purpose. She believes she has more climate allies in Parliament today than when she first arrived, and her message of clean, green energy only resonates more as the planet warms.
It's pretty basic that we have a future that is not connected to threatening our children's lives. That's so fundamental, and I think most Canadians understand that.
Even though we're not quite ready for that change yet, she kind of speaks to the part of us that knows this is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to tackle climate change.
May is stepping away from the leadership, but has prepared the next generation of climate fighters, like new MP Jenica Atwin.
She's been so inspiring for any of us who have, wanted to see someone take bolder steps for climate action. It paves the way also for other female politicians, which we know we need more voices of women in the House. And so she's just, she's been a gift to us.
Elizabeth May will still be in Parliament with a simple ethic.
I'm a worker.
And a simple message that she's not done yet.
I just put my head down and keep on going.
Eric Sorensen, Global News.
And that is Global National for this Saturday. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, your Canada is Green Lake in Whistler, BC. We'd love to see your corner of this country, so send us your photos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night.